Oh, that's the first.
Welcome. Well, welcome and thank you for coming out on this wintry day. I sort of thought this morning coming in it'll be a small crowd, so that's okay. So a small crowd, thank you for showing up. We appreciate you. I'm Linda Ford. I'm the chair of the Henderson County Democratic Party. I'm delighted you're here. We have an important choice to make on March 3rd. Sometimes the Democrats don't get choices in March, but we have choices in March this year. One of the biggest choices is that we get to decide who we would like to represent us in Washington, D.C. in the U.S. House. And we know who that's not, right? So fortunately, we will have one of these 5 people representing us. Thank you all for showing up on this lovely day. Maddox actually had to drive in snow to get here from Madison, so he's going to duck out a little early so he doesn't have too much snow going home. So thanks for being here, all of you. And we're really fortunate to have all of the candidates here. We also have several other candidates who have showed up today, just so I can shout out their names. So John Morgan, where are you? John Morgan is running... John Morgan is running for House 113, NC House 113. He's an unaffiliated who's a really, really good guy. He's carrying around a clipboard. If you could sign so we're sure his name gets on the ballot, that would be super. Second person we have here at the county level is Reed Barwick. Reed, would you give us a wave? Reed's running for the Henderson County School Board. We also have Jerry Smith running for mayor of Hendersonville. And we have Gina Baxter running for Hendersonville City Council. Gina is the winner. Are there any other local candidates that I missed? Oh my gosh! Just so you have your full name to go with the applause, that's Mary Ellen Kustin. She's running for school board for the 3rd time. This time we will get them over the finish line, right? Amen. All right. So here's the way the conversation today is going to go. Each candidate will introduce themselves briefly, and then there's 4 questions that every candidate will be invited to answer. Once we're done with those 4, we'll have a lightning round where each candidate gets a different question every time. And they have 2 minutes to answer those questions. So that's the basic format. And those questions, by the way, are pulled from the ones that many of you submitted. I think we had 30 some odd questions at the end. So those questions, Mark has those questions and he'll be offering those to the candidates. So a quick note about the primary. NC11, as you probably know, has 16 counties. It's a pretty large sprawl on the map without that many people in a lot of it. Buncombe has most of the people. So often, sometimes some of us, I should say, feel like the NC11 candidate isn't really our person. So if you want the NC11 candidate to feel like your person, listen really thoughtfully to what these people have to say, and then decide which one is your person, and then show up with all your friends and neighbors in tow on March 3rd to go to the primary.
Hey y'all, first of all, I've had a few questions. If anybody needs a restroom, right out the door, to the right, down the hall, first couple doors. Thanks everybody for being here. Just want to say a couple words about Mark here. Mark and his wife, Paige Posey, own WTZQ, 95.3 FM and 1600 AM. They co-host my family's favorite radio morning show, The Breakfast Club with Mark and Paige. Regionally, WTZQ has been voted favorite local radio station. Mark and Paige have been named favorite radio personalities in the Best of the Blue Ridge contest for the last 7 years in a row. They are both deeply committed to making this county a better place to live and work. Both have become my good friends over the years. and I've told myself I would never miss an opportunity to acknowledge their impressive dedication and their selflessness they both showed in the days and weeks after Hurricane Helene hit Western North Carolina.
Yeah.
As many others in the county, the only connection my family had to any information or the outside world was our battery-powered radios, which we may see here soon. For at least a month, anytime you turned on the radio, there was Mark trying to ensure we all had up-to-date information, supplies, road closures, information about whereabouts and safety of loved ones all over the county. They've both gone above and beyond for years here in Henderson County, too many times to count, and I can't thank them enough for making my hometown a better place every day.
Yeah.
Let's give them give Mark a warm welcome and to a real community here. Thank you, Greg. You are too kind. I think that was my 2 minutes, pretty much, right there. Again, we've got another one coming. So, folks, I promise you, Paige and I will do our best to keep you informed about emergency situations coming up over the next few days. Again, we'll do our best. Just a reminder, all of our candidates have 2 minutes for all of their answers and what they're doing. We do have a timekeeper, so just so you know, each candidate will, when you see the yellow card, that's your 15-second warning. When you see the pink card, that is your time. If you're in the middle of a sentence, please feel free to finish your sentence, and then we'll move on to the next. The candidates are lined up in order of when they registered for the election. So that's the order that we have them lined up in. So, and again, a reminder that Paul Maddox will have to leave early because of weather. So sometime around the 11 o'clock point, we will give him an opportunity to give his closing comments and allow him to leave due to the weather. All right, are you ready to get started?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. We'll start with candidate introductions. Again, 2 minutes each. And Zelda Briarwood, we will start with you, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It is a pleasure to be here in Henderson County. Starting to get a little feedback.
Sure.
So, my background is in public health, social services, direct services, and education. But most importantly, I'm a member of the working class. I work paycheck to paycheck for the most part. I have my entire life. I don't come from wealth. I don't come from a family of notoriety. I'm one of you. And I say this because right now, up in Washington, we have people deciding child care for us when they have nannies. People making decisions for us in regards to transit and public transportation when they have private jets and limos. We have people up in Washington who are deciding what our education system looks like when they send their kids to private school. I could keep going on and on, but the point being here is, when I look up into Washington, I don't see a lot of representation for the working class. And I think that that's something that the Democratic Party has lost sight of. It used to be a party of the people, and it needs to be a party of the people again. Because, let's face it, the working class, we provide the labor, and the labor comes before the capital and making money. My vow, as your next representative, is to always be accountable to you, not a party, the people of Western North Carolina. Thank you.
Jamie Ager, please.
Thank you all so much. I'm Jamie Ager. I'm from over in Fairview. I'm a fourth generation farmer over there. My family's been over there since 1916. My great-grandparents moved here in 1916, and my great-grandfather started a farmers co-op here in Western North Carolina. That's been, so my family's been involved in public service for many years, agricultural leadership, and the farm over in Fairview, we had a dairy farm until I was about 12 years old, and then through my high school years, it was mostly there just to keep me and my brothers out of trouble, and it sort of worked, not always. But my wife, Amy, and I graduated from Martin Wilson College just up the road. We were young and idealistic about coming back to the farm, making it work. Now it's been 25 years, and we've spent those 25 years building, we're running our family farm, but also building a little meat company that's based on deep values around good for the land, agriculture that's good for the land, that's high welfare for the animals, and ultimately good for the employees, the farmers that we work with, and most importantly, the customers that we care about so much. And so really those values are what sort of carried me into this crazy decision to try to run for Congress. But we're, really, my main sort of inspiration for what does it mean to be a Democrat, and to me, to answer that question simply, it's Democrats have always been and always will be the party of working people. And to me, that's going to be the job that I do for the next 8 months, running around Western North Carolina. I was out in Madison County yesterday, meeting with the clerk of court, meeting with the sheriff, meeting with lots of folks out there. I was in Henderson County this morning. We actually do a little business over in Henderson County, so we got a warehouse for wholesale operations that run off Upward Road. And so, what a crowd. Thank y'all so much. We're super excited, and I can't wait to go beat Chuck Edwards next November. Thank y'all.
Next up, we need Whipple.
Well, I look at the energy here tonight, and I'm really excited about that, and I'm also ready to beat Chuck Edwards in the next election. I've been talking about being a licensed civil engineer and how that makes me the best candidate for Helene recovery. That may be true. We've been talking about affordable housing and a living wage, but that takes time. I also have the new ideas that could revitalize this country and the American experience. But what does that matter? Right now, Donald Trump is threatening our very democracy. At home, Trump is creating a paramilitary force answerable only to the administration. Abroad, Trump has made a board of peace, including autocratic nations that paid $1 billion to Trump, and it answers only to Trump. His attempts to amass power are more alarming than any other issue we can discuss today. If anyone protesting ICE fights back too hard, Trump will invoke the Insurrection Act, allowing him to use the United States Army as a domestic police force. Everyone in this room knows this. We need leaders who can anticipate tactical moves. We need leaders with knowledge of military strategy. We need leaders who understand how history invokes the future. I am one of those leaders. I played chess my entire adult life. I've studied special forces missions and military campaigns. Moreover, I know how people think, and I can react to changing situations. Please elect me, Lee Whipple, for your House seat in North Carolina District 11. Thank you.
Next up, we have Paul Maddox.
Good morning. I'm coming to you from Yancey County, where I drove through the snow this morning. And that sort of demonstrates the cool and awesome diversity, which is this huge district. The thing that binds us all together are these beautiful mountains and who we are as people. I'm a scientist. My mother's family has been in Yancey County for 6 or 7 generations. I have to leave early to go and get her firewood, or else she'll have my hide. So I apologize for that. But I appreciate you all being here, and this is a wonderful sight to see the energy and just the sheer number of people here. We need to fix things, and as a scientist, I'm a trained scientist. I fix things. That's what you do as a scientist. You identify a problem, you look to see how you can solve that problem, you use a tool or make a new tool, a law, for instance, to solve that problem, and then you implement that tool and you fix things. That's what I've done my entire adult life, and as a hillbilly, that's also what I do, right? You don't just let the pump run dry. You fix it. And so that's what I am. I'm half hillbilly, half scientist, and that combination, I think, can do some real damage in Washington. and stir things up and make things right for the people of Western North Carolina. So I'm Paul Maddox, and I hope that I can earn your trust and confidence, and have a safe week ahead, please.
And finally, we have Richard Hudspeth.
Good morning, Henderson County. My name is Richard Hudspeth. I'm a family physician. I'm running to defeat Chuck Edwards because he has failed us. Failed us on Helene recovery. Failed us on health care. Failed us on affordability. And quite honestly, I don't even recognize our country most days. I've been serving patients in Henderson County for over 20 years and also ran Western North Carolina's largest community health center for over 10. While Chuck Edwards has done his best to limit access to health care by delaying Medicaid expansion for over 10 years, by cutting $50 billion from North Carolina health care. I've been working hard to expand health care, and we did that. We have more than tripled the number of patients who now have access to affordable health care in Western North Carolina to over 80,000 patients. What we have been able to show is to create an opportunity for people to get their health care. And I know how that has transformed people's lives when they have access to health care. That also allowed us to step up, to do what needed to be done in our darkest hours after Hurricane Helene. It allowed us to pivot, to go to places where people needed help. In some of our hardest hit areas, Barnardsville, Chimney Rock, Lake Lure. We also showed up at seniors' homes to make sure that they had medicine, food, and water. And we showed up right here in Hendersonville at our community shelter as well as at the Ag Center. And yet, here we are, a year and a half later, and we are struggling from Hurricane Helene. We are struggling to put our lives back together. I'm the candidate who has the proven experience to get the job done. Thank you so much. I will definitely work for your vote here in North Carolina, so thank you so much.
So, you've now met your candidates. Let's start with the questions. But before we do that, please forgive me for not mentioning at the very beginning a big thanks to the Henderson County Democrat Party for putting on this. A reminder, the 4 questions we are about to ask, our candidates did have access to those questions. When we get to the lightning round, those are questions that they do not know, and they will hear for the first time. And we'll start again in the same order. And what we'll do, because of the microphone, we'll start in this order, and we'll come down to Hudspeth, and then we'll start the next question with you, so the microphone can go back that way. Make sense? All right. Remember your time and your timekeeper. All right. Our first question. Helene. How should the federal government assist Western North Carolina with ongoing Helene recovery and preparations for the next Western North Carolina disaster? Zelda?
So North Carolina requested funds to cover about 48% of the damage that we had from Helene. So out of $60 billion in damages, we have received 8%. Sandy, 78%. Katrina, 73%. Maria, 73%. Matthew, 53%. Irma, it's definitely not 325%. 32%. I named this because we historically have received the least amount for damages than any other place in regards to a natural disaster related to a hurricane. Chuck Edwards, yeah, he sat on that appropriations committee, promised us $50 billion. We got 8. That's not leadership, that's failure. And out of roughly 800 applications for FEMA's Hazard Migration Grant Program, 600 of those applications made it up to FEMA headquarters in Washington, and to date, none of them have been approved. I will work with Josh Stein, Jeff Jackson, and our future Senator Roy Cooper to bring a statistically accurate proposal to the House Appropriations Committee, which won't have our good friend Chuck on it anymore, and demand that we cut the bullshit and get the funds we all deserve. I will prioritize investment in climate-resilient infrastructure, which will bring tens of thousands of good union-paying jobs that cannot be outsourced or given on over to AI, and that also prioritize renewable energy. And I will also lead an audit of FEMA where the bureaucratic red tape addressing its failings happens, and make sure that every single pending application is taken care of. Thank you.
Same question to you. You want me to ask the question again?
Sure.
All right. How should the federal government assist Western North Carolina with ongoing Helene recovery and preparations for the next Western North Carolina disaster?
So, good question. September 27th, 2024, Western North Carolina got severely impacted by Hurricane Helene. And the infrastructure, our roads, our culverts, our fence lines on the farms, all that stuff got washed away. And not only that, but we lost friends and neighbors throughout our communities. And this was a devastating storm that severely impacted so many people and still impacts so many people. We like to talk about it in the past tense, but it's been almost 18 months since this storm, and we're still not recovered. We've got a long way to go. And as Zelda said, $60 billion in damages. We're still less than 10% of that revenue coming in. We had politicians come in to Swannanoa and get all excited, and I met with some nonprofits over in Swannanoa on Wednesday morning, and they said they had a bunch of truckloads coming into their facilities that day to help with repair, but it all got pushed out because we had politicians blocking the roads and not helping, and they got promised to get this place back in shape. So first of all, we're lacking massive amounts of dollars. So many small towns and municipalities throughout the region are still waiting for money to get the money, and it's not there. There's so many applications sitting on Pam Bondi's desk, not there. We are frustrated and angry, and it's reasonable. And if there's ever a job for a Western North Carolina representative, is to get the money flowing where it needs to go. So we need to cut red tape, we need to get FEMA going. We've got lots and lots of work to do to invest in all this stuff. But we also need a leader who's going to show up for the community when times are tough, when we're struggling, and we never saw Chuck Edwards at all after that storm.
You go for the same question. You want to ask it again?
Definitely.
All right. How should the federal government assist WNC with ongoing Helene recovery and preparations for the next Western North Carolina disaster?
Yeah, it seems like FEMA has really failed us on this one, and that's the fact. I mean, it seems in a large part that's due to the administration and just a wish to ignore any kind of help they can give to anyone. But for me, I'm a licensed civil engineer, like I said before, and I really am the most qualified candidate to guide Western North Carolina through the recovery. There's flood damage, infrastructure repair, construction schedules, budgets, government regulations. I can't tell you how many government regulations I've gone through trying to make projects happen. It's all part of my direct work experience. And also, small businesses are going to need to hand up with recovery. Their contribution is just essential to Western North Carolina's well-being. So I'm going to tell you about this guy he's associated with FEMA. His name is Michael Watley. Maybe you heard about this guy. He's supposed to be making sure, as Zelda said, that the hazard mitigation grant program, that they got about $1.4 billion to help with residents who lost their homes and need the construction back. So What happened? Where's the money? We haven't seen a single dime of that money. So what do you think? I mean, I'm just sort of postulating here that Michael Watley and maybe some of his executive FEMA buddies, maybe he made off with some of that money. He's delaying and delaying. I can't even believe that anyone would think that. But you have to remember that this guy was directly appointed by Donald Trump. So what could they do? We have to hold these men accountable and bring that money to our residents now for Western North Carolina. Thank you.
Paul Maddox, same question to you.
Well, I was getting my hair cut yesterday in preparation for this outstanding event, and I went up to Carolyn's beauty salon up Highway 80 towards Mount Mitchell from our house, and Carolyn was cutting my hair, and we were talking about this, and she says, well, you know, we've done pretty well with recovery. And I said, well, you know, Carolyn, we haven't gotten 10% of what we're supposed to get. She said, is that right? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, you know, if you look around, it's pretty good. And I said, you know why? It's because the people are busting their tails to fix this place. And the people are doing this without money. And, I mean, it's not fair. There's a post on the highway between my house and Burnsville, which is the nearest town. And there's a power line that's dripping down, and somebody stuck a tree branch to hold it up. It's been that way since the floods. And you know, it's working. But that's not the way it's supposed to be. These are simple things. We need to, this is a problem. We identify the problem. We look at how we fix the problem. And we fix it. We need money to put a power pole there instead of a tree branch, right? So let's get the money to do that. It's not so complicated. So why is Chuck Edwards making it so complicated? Lord knows. But I can tell you that if you just sort of look at the problem and logic it out, we can do this, okay? We can get the money we're supposed to have and be rewarded for the hard work that we do to help ourselves here. Thank you.
Mr. Hudspeth, any question?
I think after 5 times we've got the question. First thing, let's beat Chuck Edwards. That's going to help us get Hurricane Helene. The other thing I believe I was the only candidate that posted, we need to hold people accountable. And the way we do that, first person is Christy Mill. She has failed us as a director. We've heard we're getting no relief, no signatures. She's supposed to sign every check that goes over $100,000 when they sit on her desk. She's out there wearing a cowboy hat in El Salvador. We need her here at her desk signing some damn checks for Western North Carolina. That is number one. And if you so choose to elect me to Congress, I will make sure that she's sitting before Congress and we actually look to impeach her. And I'm the only candidate that's put that out there right now. We need to hold people accountable for this. It's getting outrageous. I think there's a couple other things that we need to look at, right? One is we need to re-engage on the global stage around climate action. In order to prevent future disasters, whether it's here or in Florida or California, or we see we have a weather disaster happening across this country. What's going to happen? How are we going to pay for this? And then the last thing I want to say is we actually need to fix our national debt. This prevents us. We're burdening our next generation for a debt that's not going to help them pay for future disasters. We need to fix that problem too. And the best way to do that is kick Chuck Edwards' ass out of Congress and let's get a Democrat in there who actually knows how to get this stuff done. Thank you so much.
Next question is involving health care. How can the federal government help improve access to health care across Western North Carolina? Richard, we'll start with you.
Can you repeat the question? Joking. You heard me. I spent my whole life as a family physician creating access for patients for healthcare. We've done that in Western North Carolina. We can do that. Again, I believe I'm the only candidate out there that has actually put out a proposal to how to fix our healthcare system. And that is universal healthcare coverage for everyone in this nation. It's about damn time. Don't let people tell you we can't do this. We spend over $5 trillion on healthcare right now. That's more than twice any other wealthy comparable country in the world. And our outcomes are terrible. When you look at just a simple thing like how long do we live in this country compared to other people, we're number 48 on the list. Since when, as Americans, do we accept the fact that we get way less and pay way more? That is outrageous. We can do that with a national health care plan. I believe the time is ripe in order for us to get that. Get that done in Congress. The fact that we don't have subsidies in ACA, the fact that we have all these problems. I will tell you, from a doctor's perspective, some of those things are absolutely important, but they are a Band-Aid on a hemorrhaging patient, and that patient is the United States of America. Medicare for all, let's get it done. I'll say the last thing around healthcare. I'm a primary care physician. When you look at other comparable countries, again, these same countries, they spend about 15% on primary care in order to get better outcomes, cheaper, cost savings, and better equity. Right now, our commitment to primary care is going down, and it's less than 5%. We need to reprioritize how we spend our American dollars in this healthcare system. Thank you all so much.
I'm a cancer research scientist. That's my scientist hat. I spent my life looking for answers to understand how cells divide, and cell division is a fundamental cause of all cancers. And cancer doesn't care if you're black or white or who you voted for. They don't care what your income bracket is. It will affect you, and it has affected me, and it will affect all of you in some way or another. And so, funding research is a critical factor in our lives. And my research grants were cut in the spring, which is part of the reason that propelled me to stand here in front of you today. But and so somehow, somewhere, somebody made the decision that funding for discovering cures and better treatments for cancer was a bad idea. And so who made that decision? Nobody in their right mind would make that decision, I believe. And so why, right? So nobody's asking the question, well, how did you make that decision? Why did you do that? Why did you cut the subsidies for ACA? Why did you do any of the number of things that you've done? So somebody needs to ask questions and to figure out why. And that's what scientists do, is ask questions and understand solutions. And that's what I am. And so I think what we need to do is get to the bottom of why these cuts have been made, and then how we get to a new solution, like Richard's talking about, where we all get health care without having to worry about it. We need a government that lifts us up and gives us things like health care instead of pushes us down. Thank you.
I am also in favor of Medicare for all. Now, it's a simple solution, but there are some issues with immediate implementation, because the health insurance industry is so large and so extraordinarily complex. So we need to unwind the waste and the complexity and bloat in the health insurance companies so that they can start to trim unneeded workers and policies away year by year. If all health insurance companies were suddenly replaced by a simple government program there would be enormous unemployment. So over time, we can do this. We can do this over time. And although hospitals are doing some work to grow their presence in rural communities, in the short term, we need mobile health and dental units to travel to underserved areas. This service has worked very well in the past, and we should ramp it up as a temporary solution. In addition, there's been a growing shortage of doctors and nurses. You all know this is true. My solution would be to redefine the role of women in the military. Historically, the role of women in the military has been as nurses and doctors. The military should offer complete certified training for women to serve as doctors and nurses when they enter the military. If they receive this paid education instead of their GI Bill benefits, our military will be more ready for combat, and our society will be rewarded with more doctors and nurses and a more robust healthcare system. Thank you.
So, healthcare, as I traveled around the community, Jackson County a couple of weeks ago, I was in Clay County last week, and talking to folks all over the district, healthcare is on the front of everybody's mind right now, because in January of this year, the Obamacare subsidies expired, and so many folks' insurance skyrocketed. And to me, this is the thing I've heard about over and over and over again over the last couple of weeks. And so when I look at the healthcare system, this is a behemoth, right? And I talked to a lobbyist guy who was in somewhere and working with the healthcare system. I said, can we fix this? He's like, I don't think you can. And to me, that's an unpatriotic answer. We're Americans. We do big things. We solve hard problems. This is who we are as a country. And so what I think right now, when we look at healthcare, we've got two sort of house on fire problems. These subsidies that so many folks, these premiums are going up 20, 30, 40, 50%, are devastating families in our communities. So we've got to get some relief there immediately. How do we do that now? Number two, rural hospitals, with all these laws, with the big billionaire bill that happened last summer. We have some rural hospitals all over Western North Carolina that are fragile and at risk from losing those. So we need to shore up those rural hospitals. And long term, we do know what winning looks like in healthcare. We know that when people have good primary care, they trust a doctor, that they know that's called winning. That's when we know we can do this. When healthcare costs aren't the #1 cause of bankruptcy in this country, that's good news. We need to work towards that. We need to have a healthcare system where people feel like they can afford their prescription drugs, and this isn't devastating them. And it's not only affecting people in that way, it's affecting mental health too, because the insecurity of not knowing how you're going to pay for all these things is really anxiety-inducing among so many folks. And I think this is all a really important issue to tackle.
The United States pays the most for health care in the entire world. And yet, despite that, we have fewer healthcare resources and worse results. Also, some of the worst mortality. There we go. Point being is, we do have a broken system. From a public health perspective, lack of insurance is the biggest barrier for people, which will ultimately lead to them being priced out of healthcare. And I cannot begin to tell you how infuriating hearing the words priced out of healthcare is, because let's be honest, healthcare is a human right. We all deserve it. Furthermore, let's look at the insurance companies, because it doesn't really provide us a service. It doesn't contain costs. It doesn't expand coverage or expedite care. Its sole purpose is profit. And forgive me, but I think that there are certain industries that should not be for profit, including the healthcare system. So, what I am doing is a thorough meta-analysis and systematic review of universal healthcare systems that already exist in other countries. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, y'all. We have plenty of other people that we can look to who have already had integrated health care for years. For instance, Germany, first country that had integrated health care, and that was back in 1885, y'all. We are way behind there. Universal health care for all, and the last thing that I will say with great gusto, we will ban for-profit health care. Thank you.
Subject is on agriculture. How can the federal government support local farms in western North Carolina? Zelda, we'll start with you.
When we look at damages from Helene, we've all seen the damages, but it doesn't affect just the residents. It also affects our small businesses, and I consider our local agricultural system part of the small business. It's also part of the American dream, y'all. It takes a certain kind of person to be willing to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning every single day and do that hard, toiled labor for the sake of their communities. But what happens when we don't take care of our small businesses and our local farmers? We then have private equity firms that will come on in and buy up that land. And when they do that, it's ultimately going to be going to either corporate farms or data centers. Absolutely sucking our resources dry, our electricity, our water, and here's the deal. All of our prices for those utilities are going up because of these data centers. I want to consider local farming, just like I consider mom and pop shops. We subsidize them over corporations. We also need to take into consideration the environmental impact that we are having from corporations here in this country. Because when we have corporations that are focusing in on things like farming, and taking those jobs away from people, it does irreparable harm. And if there's anything that we need to keep in mind as we move forward in our efforts for Helene recovery, it's prioritizing the people of Western North Carolina over profits. Thank you.
Question for me. Yes, it is. So as a family farmer out in Fairview for the past 25 years, I'm super familiar with the challenges of farming as an occupation. I sort of see this binary question of like working people versus business owners, and in the context of farming and agriculture and small business generally, is business owners in those communities are working people every day, getting things done. And to me, how do we preserve the strength of our local agricultural economy? Here in Western North Carolina, we've got such a strong, vibrant example of what entrepreneurial agriculture looks like. I feel like we've got so many good friends over here in the apple industry. Over here, we've been over in Fairview for many, many years, and I feel like the farming community is folks that have been in these mountains for many, many years. And to me, these deep relationships that we all build with each other throughout time stand the test of time. And people are loyal to each other beyond just political parties. We know each other from being in the trenches, working together on farms. Here in Western North Carolina, we've got huge threats from farmland, housing developments, and everything else, so we need to make sure we have good, strong programs around farmland preservation. I saw the Conserving Carolina hat out here. I love that. Good work being done all over Western North Carolina, preserving land. And I think that in general, as I look at the big picture agricultural system in this country, our federal government subsidizes essentially row crop agriculture, corn, beans, cotton, those types of things. Here in Western North Carolina, we don't have as much flat land to have our agricultural economy dependent on these things so much. And so we've really developed a model for what entrepreneurial agriculture can look like. And I think continuing that's good news, because that's how we're going to win here in Western North Carolina. And keep buying local food, y'all. It really helps keep farmers on their land, and it really helps the economy. And so thank y'all so much.
So we're in Henderson County. Henderson County grows some of the best apples in America. My mom taught me to eat the gala apples, but there's a guy I work with who just ate nothing but Honey Crisp, I'll tell you. So, she likes that one. Well, all our farms need to be given the same chance to excel as big corporate farms. Western North Carolina farmers and ranchers tend to be smaller community farmers or family farms, and it's a fact we should be proud of, and it diversifies his agriculture, which means stronger agriculture. So I support higher 1099-K reporting thresholds to decrease administrative burdens. I support benefits for growing and ranching organically to keep our environment safer, and insurance needs to be more affordable and more comprehensive. I would also work with Ag Carolina Farm Credit to lower leasing costs for equipment and make sure that there are fair repair and part replacement options. Buncombe County has a low-cost equipment rental program for local farmers that should be expanded to all counties in District 11. Thank you. But we have to be sure it's done right, too. Some area farmers are relying too heavily on chicken waste to fertilize their crops. This waste has 3 times as much phosphate content as other animal waste, and that pollutes our creeks and rivers. Nitrate fertilizers can be just as bad. Our local farmers are part of the backbone of our community, so they should be helped and celebrated. I will agree that Jamie Ager is the candidate with the farming contacts, but if you elect me in his place, I promise to use his knowledge to the utmost to help our farming community.
How many people, show of hands, have primary source of income is farming? Good. So how many people have crops that they grow on their, like grow tomatoes or corn or whatever, right? Do you get a subsidy? No. So big farms, I don't know exactly how big your farm is, but I'm thinking about big corporate ones out in the Midwest. They get huge subsidies, right? Because they have thousands and thousands of acres that they're growing corn and wheat for, right? Smaller farms, I'll put yours in a smaller farm category, are very important for local industry. But what you all do, what we do, I do, is also important. And so if I grow or you grow, if you have an acre plot of land that your home is on, and you spend a third of that on some farming that you can, tangibly prove, you should get some kind of tax rebate for doing that. I mean, just because you are now part of the ecosystem, and you're increasing our health care, because everybody knows if you eat fresh food, you're going to have better health outcomes. And so I think that gets a rebate or a subsidy for us, for you, and not just the people who have farming as a primary income, which admittedly isn't that many people out of this room, right? So that's my idea, but there are many others, and I would lean heavily on people like Jamie to discuss that and to make sure that what time? Okay. that we subsidies are distributed fairly. Thank you.
There are sensible things we can do in order to preserve our farmland for small farmers. Some of that are just simple tax policies. We've heard some of these things, and we can do that. We can get things in conservancy. We can do land use taxes. Lots of policies that can do that. But there are also some other things. So as I was running a business at Blue Ridge Health, I know how hard it is to run a business. And one of the biggest things we need to do to run a business is a stable economy. Let's get rid of these tariffs. How about let's start with that? When our farmers can't sell their crops overseas on the open market because we have tariffs and people are refusing to buy our crops, then what do we end up doing? Giving them government handouts. I know farmers. They work hard, and they want to be paid for the work they do. They don't want a government handout. And I think thank you. I think there are other connected issues. You know, we live in an integrated world right now, right? We have to solve our housing problem because that is a big pressure on farmers to sell their land to developers, private equity, to do that. We need to begin to solve our housing problem to take the pressure off that demand to buy farmland. The other place we're interconnected with is just immigration. We need a sane and immigration policy in order to help our farmers get those tomatoes to market, get those apples to market. It's insane. I've been here in Henderson County for over 20 years. I know what it's like, and we've been helping them take care of the immigrants that help them do the farming. The last thing, and I know Paul said, how many people here grow vegetables? Well, I'm the only one that dropped a tax proposal. $500 credit for everyone who owns and grows their own food. Let's get back connected to the earth. Let's support ourselves by growing our own tomatoes and a $500 tax credit to do that, so we don't have to continue to subsidize big agribusiness. We can grow healthier food for ourselves right here at home. Thank you so much.
Richard, we'll start with you, and Paul, when you finish your answer to this question, go ahead and give us your 2-minute closing so that you can get back home safely, all right? So the question is regarding affordability. How can the federal government reduce the cost of living for Western North Carolina residents?
There are two parts of the equation when you're talking about affordability. One is wages. We need to increase wages. The wage in North Carolina is $7.25. How ridiculous is that? Can we ask Chuck Edwards to live on $7.25 an hour as he runs into McDonald's? Heck yes. That's a big part of the equation. The other part of the equation is actually getting stuff done. Getting health care. Let's take that off of people's plates right now, that they don't have to worry about those things that they're going to spend their money on. Number two, we've already talked about it. We need affordable housing. There are solutions that are out there for us to create better options for places to get affordable housing. When I talk to folks that are trying to build affordable housing in this, what they say is, well, I got to get a little bit from the USDA, I got to get a little bit from HUD, I got to get a little bit from here, and they're all different regulations, and it's just too much trouble. So what they do is they spend 10 years getting private donations in order to build housing for folks. We, the federal government, can provide seed money. It doesn't have to be grants, it can be loans in order to build affordable housing for this country. Right? Number three, childcare. We have no leadership. As a business owner, again, I actually delivered some of my employees' patients, and they're, Dr. Hudspeth, this is so fantastic, and we're going to come back and work for you 12 weeks later after their FMLA. They're like, I can't find childcare. I can't come back to work for you. We need to solve this problem. There are places already in this country, in other states, who have provided universal childcare for the citizens of their state. Since when are we accepting that level here in North Carolina? We can do better. We will do better. Let's beat Chuck Edwards. Thanks.
Affordability is a very complex topic, and so wages are one of them. Chuck Edwards got in trouble with some of his McDonald's out in Swain County, where he wasn't paying the minimum wage to some of the workers, and that's an example of the kind of leadership that we have right now. So. I think we're relying on, there's a certain celebrity, I don't think I'm at liberty to say, who's from McDowell County, but he's raising a huge amount of money to build 100 houses for people in McDowell County. And he's a celebrity and relying on private interests to build affordable housing for people. Now, why can't the government do that, right? Why can't we insist that, okay, for every private investment like that. We have a public investment. And so people can have a safe and comfortable place to live. We're getting ready to have a huge storm. And there's people out there who aren't going to have heat, and they aren't going to have water. And so we need to solve that problem. That can't be who we are in America. The government should be lifting people up, right? We need to build housing for people who can't afford it at this moment. And at some point in all of our lives, we hit some kind of low point, right? And where it may not be an emotional low, but it's a financial low. And sometimes you just need a little bit of help. And the government should have plans to do that. And that's a problem. We can fix it.
Once again, Paul Maddox, we'll give you your 2 minutes for your closing comments so you can get home safely.
Feel kind of like I'm cheating you guys. I want to hear you. I appreciate that, and my mom appreciates that. She's been texting me. My bottom's been vibrating. I really am thankful for the opportunity to get to know all of y'all and to get to know these fine people. And we're going to beat Chuck Edwards. Doesn't matter who you are, but we're going to beat him. And that is a critical moment in our future. Okay? We have a choice. Are we going to live like we're in a kingdom again? Or are we going to be back in a proper democracy with a balance of power and checks and balances, and people can't just make decisions willy-nilly, right? So I need to take my whole 2 minutes, I think, but I just want to say thank you all for being here. Thank you all for showing up, and we're going to beat Chuck Edwards. Let's go! Come on now. And drive safely.
So let's go back to our question on affordability, and of course that question is, how can the federal government reduce the cost of living for Western North Carolina residents?
Okay, well, Chuck Edwards seems to be on everybody's mind. We want to be careful about how we talk about Chuck Edwards, though, because he really was from a low-income family. He worked at McDonald's when he was in high school, and he worked his way up into corporate government. So he's rich now, and I'll tell you, he is somebody we have to be careful of. I tell you, he has a caucus where he wants to build housing in the Yes in My Backyard. Have you heard about this? YIMBY? Frankly, where he's living, there's no affordable housing going up there. It's a $1 million home, and he is, well, he's doing okay, I guess. But I want to make clear, the prices don't really go down. When politicians say that inflation is lowering, prices are still going up, just not as fast. And what we're talking about that we need is a living wage for our residents in Western North Carolina. And I had an idea for this. It was to create a spreadsheet and have a federal living wage that goes by state. So that if you say we have 538 electoral votes in the country, then you take each state's electoral vote count and take the ratio of that and assign minimum wages to each state by that ratio. So say in North Carolina we have 16 electoral votes, you take the ratio of 16 divided by 538, and that's the minimum wage here that I made the spreadsheet for. Like California, I don't know how many electoral votes they have, but they have a higher minimum wage. Look, if the wages need to be increased over a period of time, I think that's a fair compromise. You can't just jump minimum wages. And once the majority workers are paid more, everyone will benefit. Thank you.
I think the average wage for the McDonald's around here is $12.25 an hour, trying to make a living and pay for healthcare, childcare, groceries, housing, all these things. It's an overwhelming feel to feel like you can do all these things. So number one, healthcare is overwhelming people right now. As I said before, the subsidies that expired in January is totally unacceptable. Chuck Edwards voted to discontinue those subsidies. We're going to hold him accountable for that over and over and over again, because that was not okay for so many families here in Western North Carolina. Second thing, housing. Richard's right. Too much red tape, too much disorganized ways to find the money to build good affordable housing in this country and in Western North Carolina. The average, in order to afford, I was up in Jackson County, in order to afford a home in Jackson County, you have to be making close, like a starter home, making close to $150,000 a year. How many people can actually feel like that's an actual possible thing? It's so discouraging for so many people to feel like that's the case. Childcare. We've got 3 boys. It was terrifically expensive to get them through all their preschools, and luckily my mom's here, and she was very helpful for them. But not everybody has that advantage, and so to me, this issue of childcare, leadership in childcare, getting us the childcare opportunities for young families so they feel like they can do it. And the good news is there's models out there that we can actually look at and learn. And as the father of 3 boys, I want them to feel like they can get ahead. And whenever we look at the overwhelming reality that the economics of our current day, that our government's not working to help regular working people get ahead and win. And when they do that, they think the government is corrupt, and they get frustrated. And to me, that's where we've got to get to done.
When I started campaigning in May, I made a point to spend as much time as possible traveling Western North Carolina and talking to people about what their needs, wants, and expectations were. We developed our platform from that. It's not my agenda. It's not the agenda of a party. It is the agenda of the people of Western North Carolina. So when we talk about things like affordability, why don't I tell you about what the people want? We started, people were saying $15, $17 an hour. Since then, it's gone up to $20. And personally, I think it needs to be higher, but we're seeing progress, y'all. And we're continuously updating our platform to make sure that it reflects the needs of the people here in Western North Carolina. When we talk about affordability, let's talk about the biggest elephant in the room. We need to tax billionaires and corporations so that way we actually have the funding necessary for our social safety nets. We need to set it up so that way our social safety nets lift people out of poverty, not keep them in there. That's right. Just as an example, if you paid $1 in federal income taxes, you paid more than Tesla in 2022 and 2024, AT&T in 2021, Nike in 2020, Dish Network in 2020, Amazon in 2017, and 2018, Jeff Bezos in 2007 and 2011. Point being is the money's there. I'm not going to sit here and wait for this trickle-down economics to happen because it sure as shit ain't happening. Tax corporations and lower taxes for the working class. Lower it for people who are making less than $1 million a year. That's what we can do, y'all.
And again, as a reminder, our candidates were able to get those questions beforehand. We're now in a lightning round, and these are questions that came from you folks. We will do our best to get through all of the questions. If we don't, we'll stop when we need to so that we can all get home. So, and these questions will be designated to certain candidates. We will start with our very first question, and Zelda, Briarwood, this goes to you. how would you work to increase mental health care for lower income individuals?
I think I touched on it earlier. Social safety nets are supposed to lift people out, not keep people down. When we talk about things like mental health, I have a lot of experience working with that. My background, again, public health, social services, direct services, and education. I was a crisis services manager for a public health option for subacute treatment facilities. I was a victim service practitioner for a nonprofit that focused on sexual violence and human trafficking. I have also been a wilderness guide, providing residential treatment options in an experiential education setting for young men ages 18 to 35. The point I'm trying to get to here is when we prioritize things like mental health, we see reduction overall on the burden that public health has. When we take care of each other and make sure people's needs are met, we thrive. So what will I do? I will make sure that we have the funds and the staffing available in our education system so that way we can help students when they're struggling the most and get to the root causes of the issue before we start having things like school shootings. Furthermore, universal health care. Nice and easy. That needs to include mental health, it also needs to include dental, it also needs to include vision. Taking care of the people. You do that, people have more time and more ability to show up for their communities, and when that happens, we thrive. We have a country that we can be proud of again. We provide the American dream opportunity for our youngest again. Thank you.
Our next question is for Jamie Ager. What do you think is one key issue that is a critical campaign weakness for Chuck Edwards?
Oh, I can easily answer that question.
You got 2 minutes.
There's a lot, so we got to do a quick inventory. Number one issue that we're going to focus on this campaign to beat Chuck Edwards is the fact that he did not show up in Western North Carolina to help us recover from Hurricane Helene. There's no question about that. Less than 10% of the cost of the disaster of $60 billion has been gotten into these communities. We're almost 18 months away from that right now, and there's every community that I visit. I was in Swannanoa this week. People are very, very frustrated, and there's a lot of money that he hasn't been able to do. And my experience in business at Hickory Nut Gap has been entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship means that you go and you know how to scrap, and you know who the buyer, you figure out who the buyer is, you figure out what the problems that need to get done, and you are relentless in going to find the thing you need to go get. And to me, that is where 100% Chuck Edwards has failed. You know, I've talked to Don Davis, I've talked to a lot of different U.S. House representatives, people that are in Washington, and they're like, he's just not fighting for it. He's scared of the whole Trump administration. He's scared of showing up and fighting for us here in Western North Carolina. And to me, that is frustrating and makes me very, very mad. And we're going to hold him accountable for that every single day for the next 8 months. And that was just not cool. The second thing is he never showed up in our communities for Hurricane Helene. And when we have a natural disaster like Helene, and there is so much, financial devastation, but also emotional devastation, he never came around. He didn't ever connect with people. This just isn't in his wheelhouse to do very well. And to me, leadership requires folks to show up and be available for people.
Our next question is for Lee Whipple. What is one specific federal policy you would support to reduce the cost of housing for Western North Carolina residents?
The federal, I'm a civil engineer. I'm a licensed civil engineer in North Carolina. Affordable housing is really if you want to solve that, you really look to me first among all the candidates. There needs to be a federal program that basically mandates First, if you're building a $1 million house or whatever cost of the house you're going to build, a percentage of that money, there should be a tax that goes towards affordable housing. Secondly, whenever an owner or a contractor comes to the city to build or the county to build a subdivision, they need to assess the cost of the properties that they are building and take a percentage of that and build the affordable housing first. They need a project to build affordable housing first, and then they can build their own housing. So that's two things that will help. I think that's the main program that will help do it. I want to touch on cutting through red tape as well, especially with Hurricane Helene. What's happening now is Michael Wadley and FEMA are all talking about, well, maybe these applications weren't filled out perfectly. Well, it's disaster recovery. We have to get these funds to people. There are people in Western North Carolina who still own their houses that were totally destroyed by Hurricane Helene, and they're living in an apartment somewhere, paying for that as well. They can't afford that. They're going to go bankrupt. And we need the money to help those people with the Hazard Mitigation Disaster Program. Thank you.
The next question is for Richard Hudspeth. Do you agree that women should have the right to control their own bodies? If so, what specifically will you do to restore fundamental rights to women at the federal and state levels?
Yes. As a physician.
We need a doctor. We need you here right now.
That was my 2 minutes. All right, I believe where we left off, the answer was yes. He's okay. He's okay. Little sinkable episode likely, so he's doing fine. So as a physician, I've seen it. I've seen people ecstatic about a pregnancy. I've seen women fearful for pregnancy. I've seen infertility problems, lack of access to birth control. I've seen maternal deaths, and I've seen infant deaths. What we know is there isn't one answer to those problems. And there isn't one answer that's going to be acceptable for everyone. But what I've discovered in my time is that there's always one answer for that woman and her family. I've been trained to help and not to judge. I believe healthcare. I believe that reproductive healthcare, as the name says, is healthcare. People have a right to choose their own path in life for their healthcare in order for their pursuit of their own happiness. Simple as that. I will do what I can. It's a tough environment. We have a very tough Supreme Court. It's a tough environment. I will do what I can to protect people's rights, everyone's rights, to manage their health care. Thank you.
Next question for Zelda, Briarwood. What specifically will you do to limit the expansion of presidential power that has occurred under the Trump administration and restore the checks and balances enshrined in the U.S. Constitution?
I didn't get my blue book. In order for us to be able to address all of the issues that we've talked about today, we have to address the fact that we have an administration right now that is causing absolute chaos, destroying our democracy, and waging war on American citizens. And it is very difficult for us to be able able to fix anything when the next day we get 4 or 5 news titles telling me something else is broken. We have to hold people accountable, and that is every single person in this administration needs to be impeached and tried for the crimes that they have done to the American people. We need to show everyone in this country that no one is above the law. There is not a second set of rules for the people up at the top. For our oligarchs and our billionaires, they are just like us. And they have to be held accountable just like everyone else. In order for us to get back to what we had, actually, I think at this point, we don't need to go back to what we had because obviously it didn't work. We got here. We need to do better. So, one of the proposals that I have, thank you, is adding 2 additional branches of government. We have the branch that is focused specifically on civil services for all elected and government officials, and then we have an examination branch which will be responsible for the trying and impeaching of all elected officials and appointed officials. Take it away from Congress because you can hold all the hearings that you want and wag your finger and then nothing happens. Separate entity, better accountability.
Jimmy Ager. Much of Western North Carolina has long been strong agricultural communities. What specific actions would you take to support our farmers and strengthen the long-term sustainability of agriculture in Western North Carolina?
So Western North Carolina agriculture has been a backbone of this region. My great-grandfather was Carolina, Western North Carolina. We had a strong tobacco growing industry here for many, many years that kind of went away in the early 2000s. To me, Western North Carolina agriculture is at risk from the high level of residential encroachment on farmland, and having the ability to have good farmland preservation as part of our policies is good news. The other thing we really need to make sure we shore up for agriculture is our immigration system. And our immigration system right now has been a disaster. And the history of our ability to manage our immigration system is indicative of the entire problem with the rest of government and why people have so much cynicism about our government's ability to solve problems. And so when I look at agriculture and look at immigration, the cynicism is real and it's legit because immigration has been used as a political football for the past 20 years. And to me, that's not going to work for our economy. It's not going to work for Western North Carolina agriculture. And it doesn't work for our country because people become cynical and annoyed. And we as a country need to be able to tackle big, hard problems like immigration, like healthcare. And when people say those are not solvable, this is impossible, to me, I get out my starry-eyed idealist glasses and I'm like, no, we have to be able to solve these hard problems because we're America and we do big things and we solve hard problems and we work across the aisle and we figure out how to make this country move forward and make it better.
The next question is for Lee Whipple. Lee, what is your vision for the U.S. Department of Education?
Yeah, well, I don't know why that's funny. I'm astounded at these voucher programs and even the charter schools. It's not public schooling. It's a private enterprise. I lived in Arizona for a little while, and there were some charter schools that basically didn't accept Native Americans, and that's racial discrimination. My solution, though, my main idea to make schools a better place for our students is to have like a continuing education program for teachers. After the school year ends, maybe they get a week or two off, then there's teachers that really excel in teaching to their students. They get awards, they get noticed. Have these teachers give a lecture on certain subjects, each in their own specialty, to a group of other teachers who are willing and able to learn more about how to inspire their students and teach them what they need to excel. And if we can get a program like this going, it's sort of a cooperative program at the schools where these teachers reside, I think that we can really improve education all throughout our Western North Carolina schools. And I really also feel that teachers need the funding that they can use to not only buy supplies for their students, which they shouldn't have to, but afford to have a good life and reward their work with their students. Thank you.
Next question is for Richard Hudspeth. Given that the majority of voters in this district are not Democrats, how will you broaden your appeal, and which issues will you lead to reach those voters?
The largest voting bloc in Western North Carolina are unaffiliated voters. As Democrats, we need to have a great turnout, and we need to appeal to those folks that are unaffiliated, whether they lean Democrat, whether they're true sort of centrist, neither Democrat or Republican, and even those Republicans that are in the unaffiliated category. I have many of those who have already supported this campaign. And it's a campaign based on just common sense helping people, which is what I've done my whole life as a physician. Number one, got into this race on healthcare. When Roy Cooper announced, his number one issue was healthcare. He's our healthcare governor. I think getting him in the Senate, flipping this seat, getting me in Congress, we can actually make some moves on getting what I've asked for, which is a universal healthcare program. So, give me a second. What's the question? You have question? Sorry.
Given the majority of voters...
Majority vote, yes. How are we going to? So, we need to find those middle-of-the-road options for us in order to figure out how to get these folks excited about it. And it's all about what we can bring home to the people of Western North Carolina. And that is answers around what we talked about all day here today. Healthcare, housing, childcare, making things affordable again for people. That is what is driving the voters of this country and this district right now. In addition to that, I think there are a lot of people in the middle, in this unaffiliated voter, that are rallied like the Democrats to actually fix what's happening in our government right now. Many of the things that we're talking about appeal to our unaffiliated voters as well. So I think we have a great opportunity, better than we've had in 20 years, to flip this seat. We need to take advantage of that this year to get it done. Thank you so much.
Next question for Zelda Briarwood. Where do you stand on gun ownership and gun control?
So I have a concealed carry permit because my current day job is taking care of banking equipment, and that includes ATMs. So I work with a cash in transit system with that, and I actually saw my supervisor the year before held at gunpoint. Absolutely terrifying. Where we're at in this country right now is so precarious, because right now we are valuing the ownership of guns more than the lives of our children. We live in Western North Carolina. There are plenty of people here that rely on hunting in order to be able to get their sustenance, especially, during the winter times. We can have sensible gun legislation and reduce the amount of guns that are in this country if we prioritize things like mental health checks, universal background checks, red flag laws. The point is, if you are having a struggle with mental health and are showing signs and symptoms of that, it is our duty to make sure that we are not putting people in harm's way, not only from themselves, but also the other people that are around them. The last thing I want to say is a question that I would love to hear y'all's answers for. With the way the country is going right now, a lot of people think that there's a civil war coming. What do we do in regards to that when it comes to gun legislation? Thank you.
Jimmy Ager, how would your economic priorities protect retirees and people living on fixed incomes in this region?
Okay, to me, our retirees here, we have a lot of retirees here in Western North Carolina, obviously here today, and thank you all for coming. To me, the economic priorities around housing are not dissimilar for retirees as they are for young folks, in that everybody needs a place to live and everybody needs to have a home where we live. We need to protect Social Security and make sure that Social Security, we've got about, that program has been such a huge benefit to our country and Western North Carolina, and that program is tremendously popular, but always on the chopping block for Republican leadership. And so that to me is a critically important thing. Medicare, Medicaid, make sure these programs, Medicare specifically, because the questions for retirees is strong and robust and thorough in its coverage. We could actually increase Medicare to include dental and vision as well, and just having it for other health care. And so, and I'll just say this, I'm super open to good ideas on these types of topics. I think as a politician, as somebody running for this seat to go beat Chuck Edwards, part of what makes me a good leader and a good representative for this region is that I love to learn about what's on people's minds, and I love to learn about creative ideas and what's on people's minds here as well. So if you have thoughts and ideas here, I'm open. Let's hear them.
Whipple, an executive order will make all CBD and THCA products illegal in November of 26. Will you work to combat this? And what do you think of making marijuana available both medically and recreationally in North Carolina?
Well, I may have a controversial take on this issue, but I think I'm supported by local police and the prison community as well. And that issue, what we really need to do is legalize pretty much any recreational drug. And then the police won't have to go after any kind of non-violent offender and throw them in jail, any low level. We'll have a safe environment. The drugs won't be dangerous anymore, because you might get fentanyl in them and overdose. We have so many fentanyl overdoses, although it's been lower over the last year and 2 years, actually, under Joe Biden. But we need to make these substances available safely and tax them in, say, somewhere like an ABC store. And in that case, there are good ways to have education about these things as well. And there definitely won't be as many problem drug users. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because when you have, what happens is you have a shipment comes into a town, and suddenly everybody's partying, everybody's doing too much, and these people party too much, and they either overdose, have to go to the hospital, or sometimes they even die. And when you clean that shipment out of a community, you get a regulated, well-established system, and drug use may go up a little bit to start off with, but I believe in the end, drug use will go down because it's not a illicit substance anymore. Thank you very much. I think that's a good idea.
Richard Hudspeth, how will you ensure that rural communities in Western North Carolina have the same access to your office and constituent services as larger population centers?
Already I've started to show that. I'm out in all 16 counties across Western North Carolina. I've been part of a health system, Blue Ridge Health, that has expanded access to Western North Carolina. I've already shown up for people during Hurricane Helene. I've been out there. This is part of why I'm here in Western North Carolina as a family physician. It was about helping our rural areas. You don't need to worry about me hiding in my office. You don't need to worry about me hanging out in DC. We're going to be right here in the district in order to make sure that everyone has access to their congressional representative. I know, for example, Chuck Edwards, he's got these constituent services. That's great. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. If that's the only thing he's good at, we need a new congressman, right? Someone who's going to actually pay attention to what we need in rural areas by solving some of the problems that people are having. Again, what we've talked about here, healthcare, housing, childcare. That's going to bring people out to make sure that we can perhaps make a community again instead of divided. We all need the same things in life. We all want the same things in life. We may have different ways of going about it, but it is our time as Democrats to prove that we can get these things done for rural North Carolina, and they will be Democrats again. Thank you.
For our candidates here, Zelda, we'll start with you. What role should the federal government play in helping small mountain towns manage the infrastructure strain caused by increased tourism?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What role should the federal government play in helping small mountain towns manage the infrastructure strain caused by increased tourism?
I think at that point, the federal government needs to listen to these communities, do case studies, charrettes, bring people in to talk about these things, and then move from there. They shouldn't be making all of these decisions for us. We need to be representing ourselves, and we need a representative that's going to advocate on behalf of the people. So, what I can tell you in regards to this question is the people of Western North Carolina have been advocating for a mass transit system that actually works and that's available for everyone. So let's talk about integrating the rail system again. That allows people that are all the way out in Murphy to not have to travel 2 hours by car in order to be able to get to the nearest VA hospital. It allows people who don't necessarily have license or the ability to have licenses to be able to get into town again and be able to go with family and friends to a different town or a city. One of the things that really hit home for me is I was part of the I-40 connector charrette that happened in Asheville, and it was basically a group of people who were trying to explain to the Department of Transportation that they did not want I-40 to go cutting right across the bridge that's in Patton. They wanted it to go around and under it. They advocated for them. And the Department of Transportation said no. When we have instances like that, where people are advocating for what they need, and then you have a government that is sitting there saying, no, too bad, you're not representing the people.
Ager, if the actions of a member of your own party were shown to harm voters in Western North Carolina, would you be willing to call that out publicly? And how do you define your responsibility when party loyalty and constituent interests conflict?
So one of the core tenets of this campaign that I'm running right now is a idea about place over politics. And this word representative that this position is described by is the key word. Because to me, the word representative is this sort of constitutional responsibility of a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. And so if there is issues, if there's policy or bills or whatever that come up that are not in the interest of the people here in Western North Carolina, then I will prioritize the people of Western North Carolina. And there's no question in my mind that that needs to be the focus of what this rule does. Now, is the ability, the part of the problem that I see in our federal government right now is that the sort of national conversation about hardcore policy and the division that this sort of national political baloney that we all see, people on the ground in local areas don't feel like the federal government represents them. They feel like the federal government is represented by national interest, the interest groups, PAC money, Citizens United, all those things. To me, what I'm trying to run here, what I believe is the best thing, is to support everything that Western North Carolina needs, and that be the priority of what this role will be.
Whipple, what accountability measures would you support to make sure internet providers deliver the coverage they receive federal funding for?
Well, what really bothers me about internet providers and internet social media is the amount of lies that we hear from that area. And the real thing that I want from the federal government is a reasonable law to stop this. Now, we're thinking about First Amendment rights, but the problem is it's not just calling out fire in a crowded theater. What we have now is anybody saying anything to anyone, and it reaches 10 million people instantly. That's a real problem. We have a real problem with that. And the plan that I would think would possibly change this would be, if you're going to post something on social media, you have to put up the statement fact before you do it, and then end fact. Or opinion, and then end opinion. Or entertainment, and then end entertainment. And I know that's just a horrible thing to even consider, but these lies, these conspiracy theories, it's just reaching too many people too quickly, and it's really got to stop. Now, if the federal government needs to oversee providers to make sure that they're providing the news that they're supposed to, I have no problem with that. We can certainly hold the big social media corporations and internet services accountable for what they're doing. They can be more transparent with what they're doing. Anyway, thank you very much. That's my idea.
All right, this is our final question for the lightning round, and it's for Richard Hudspeth. Richard, if you would, keep the microphone when you finish, because we will start closing comments with you afterwards. So the question is, what specific actions would you support to ensure federal education funds reach public schools in a timely and transparent way? And would you work to increase federal investment in public education?
I get the easy one. Of course I want to increase public investment in public education. This is insane. We have generational obligations. There are at least two of them. One is to provide the best education possible for the generation, our kids and our grandkids, that this country can, the wealthiest country on earth. And what we're doing now, we have failed miserably. The second generational obligation is to make sure we leave this great planet in a better shape than when we found it. But let's get back to education. There was an earlier question about the Department of Education. It is insane when we say that we want to make education a priority in this country, and the first department that we want to get rid of is the Department of Education. That is one of the most ridiculous things that this is, well, there's a lot. I can't say it's forgive me for that slip. But what we need to have is an effective Department of Education. We need to have a Department of Education that has a national strategy for how we're going to get states to incentivize the states in order to get the best possible education out there. Right now, the funds that are now being erased from the Department of Education is putting more trouble on the states as they try and balance their budgets in order to do this. We know that the state governments are very much in charge of education, but let us not give up the fact that the Department of Education and the federal government can create incentives or disincentives for states that aren't really following the rules, or those things that aren't helpful to get our kids the best education possible. Again, what that means from an education perspective is we're going to see better schools in our nation. One of the things that I've learned over time is that public education, even in North Carolina, the rural areas suffer, and they suffer because of certain policies around property and how we fund schools. We need to change that for rural Western North Carolina, and the federal government can be a partner in that.
Now time for our closing comments from each of our candidates. Richard Hudspeth, we'll start with you, and then we'll go down the line accordingly. So, your 2 minutes begins.
Thank you. I think we are in a time like no other. I know it's a cliche. Say, oh, this is the most important election. This one truly does feel different. Are we going to recapture our democracy? Are we going to focus our efforts on what helps our rural neighbors in Western North Carolina? Or are we going to continue with what we've seen with our current congressman? I think I know the answer to that from you folks. So not only do we need a candidate who is best able to beat Chuck Edwards, but we need a candidate who's going to be ready to go to Congress day one and start getting things done for the American people. Let's take health care. Let's take a playbill out of the Republicans and their Project 2025. I want to have a Project Healthcare 2027 ready to go in Congress day one to help us start the fight to get universal health care into this country. I hope that you all seriously think about having a physician get on the ballot in November to beat Chuck Edwards. And I hope it's this physician who has a proven track record of success and innovation, who has a compassion that's been shown as a physician across Western North Carolina to offer health care for everyone. Not only working here at home, but working abroad. When I went over to West Africa to fight Ebola in West Africa, to beat it there so it doesn't come here. These are the character traits that you have in a candidate like myself. We need to make a better state, a better nation, and a brighter tomorrow. And we can do this if you vote for me in this primary. Thank you so much for your attention today.
Okay, I want you guys to wake up a little bit. Let's see. On this side of the aisle, I want you to say, beat Chuck. No, you don't want to do it? Let's do that again. Beat Chuck. All right, let's see if you guys can do a little better. You want to do better than them? Because they kind of sucked over there. Beat Chuck!
Beat Chuck!
There it is, you see? How about everybody all together? Beat Chuck!
Beat Chuck!
All right, there we go. Now, I want to say, as before, I'm a licensed civil engineer. Our community really needs that for recovery from Hurricane Helene. I have tons of new ideas for education, for affordable housing, for a minimum wage, living wage. All of these things need our priority when I get to Congress. And one of the main problems is that we have an administration and a Congress. The Senate is not going to change. We're not going to get impeachments of anybody in the coming years. But what we need to do is not waste time and try to put forward new ideas that independents get behind, and they say, hey, the Democratic Party is something that we really need to support this in the coming years and in this election and in elections forthcoming. Now, I'm kind of northern and southern. I'm kind of liberal and conservative. This helps me get into my opponent's shoes in some kind of conflict. And believe me, we are in a conflict. We are in a fight for the future of our nation, our democracy. So I've studied all kinds of things: military tactics, special forces operations, history, world history, American history. I'm trying to bring my knowledge, my experience, and my civil engineering knowledge to Western North Carolina. Please vote for me in the primary, March 3rd. Thank you.
One of the best words in the English language besides love is home. And home has been, in Western North Carolina, has been home for me. For my entire life, I've lived out in Fairview. And to me, there's no prettier place in the country than this district, the 16 westernmost counties of Western North Carolina. The national forests, the national parks, our small communities and small towns. Over the past 6 months, I've spent so much time traveling through all these small towns, meeting people, hearing about issues. And to me, I wasn't sure about enjoying this process of running for Congress. But I tell you, I've enjoyed it more than I ever imagined that I would. Meeting people, hearing people's thoughts, riding around downtown Zelda with the mayor, on his side-by-side, while he was smoking a cigarette, and I was like, can you know this thing now? And hearing people's stories. And to me, we're going to go meet Chuck Edwards next November, because we're going to focus on meeting different people, being in the communities, and talking about the issues that matter to people. Recovering from Hurricane Helene. We got to get our costs and get people to feel hopeful about the future of our country, because they can afford and they can see a future where they can buy a house, they can have health care, they can afford their groceries at the store, they can raise their kids in their communities. And these are the basic things that are not partisan. These are regular, everyday, kitchen table issues that we can be helpful with. And I just can't wait until next November, when we've traveled around and met everybody and done this, and we meet Chuck Edwards, and we send you to Washington, D.C. Thank y'all so much for today. Really enjoyed being here in Henderson County, and get to know everybody, and look forward to chatting with folks after.
We do not simply inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. And we are at a point where we need to start having those conversations. Because right now, the younger generation is looking to us. They want to know that we care about them. They want to know that we want what they want to know that they're going to have the same opportunities as those in 1965, when a minimum wage job could handle a family of 5 with an automobile and a home that they own and enough money for 2 vacations. I have experience with talking with people in regards to things like addiction and recovery. And those are hard conversations to have, y'all. But if I'm able to have a conversation with someone who was a gangbanger or who's a Proud Boy about the reality of addiction and recovery and what life looks like when it's happy and joyous and free, I can have conversations with people about the issues that are affecting them most and the future of our country. Last week, I celebrated 7 years clean and sober. And I don't tell you this to boast. I tell you this because the 3 tenets of my life since I've gotten clean and sober are honesty, integrity, and a willingness to change. And they have remained unchanged for the past 5 years. I want you to hold my ass accountable. Thank you.
All right, thank y'all for coming. That's wonderful to see all of you. I want to remind you there are 2 reasons you need to go vote in the primary. One is you have 4+1 really wonderful candidates who are really working hard for your vote and who really want to do the best thing for North Carolina. So that's one reason. Go pick one of these guys that represents you. The second reason is take all your friends and neighbors and family, because if you get them to vote in the primary, they will go vote in November, and we will beat Chuck Edwards. Thanks for coming.